Hello everybody again and welcome. Today I've got something really special for you. But at this point in our journey there was a bit of a problem. One of Kaman's friends from university actually died, and he took it upon himself to look after the gentleman's wife and see that she returned to South Sudan, along with seeing that the gentleman's body too was returned to South Sudan. So I was flying solo, and one of the places I went to was the Cairo Museum, or the Egyptian Museum more correctly. Its title has changed a number of times. At one point it was called the Egyptian Museum of Antiquities, which was built around 1902 in November, I believe. And I can say without any fear of contradiction that it is the finest museum in Egypt, and that includes the Egyptian Grand Museum. All the things that were in temples and tombs and weren't looted, of course, were placed in this museum originally. They've moved around to other places since. So you get a real sense of the artifacts of Egypt. And I've given special attention to two artifacts that are there. One of them is the Schist disk. There's a lot of controversy around that one. And another one is Tutankhamun. Now, I understand that many of the items are being moved to the Egyptian Grand Museum. So the things I show you will be in one place or the other. The Egyptian Museum of Antiquities is but a stone throw from the Colton Ritz and a short walk from downtown Cairo. Lining up for a ticket is quite an involved process, and there is a lot of security. I guess when you look at the value of the items on display, that is quite understandable. And it is one of the locations in Egypt where you require a camera ticket if you wish to take photos. Interestingly, I have had two complaints about my videos. One is that I go too fast for people to have a proper look at things, and the other is that my videos are too long. So please feel free to speed up, reverse, slow down, whatever you like, so you get the maximum enjoyment out of the video as possible. I have absolutely no idea how many sarcophaguses are in the museum, but you can see the different types and changes depending upon the status of the individual and the period of Egyptian history. This was obviously once part of a larger monument, and unfortunately in times gone by it was a common practice to take to monuments with a saw and send the hieroglyphs to places like England. Fortunately, this particular hieroglyph was saved. However, one of the unfortunate things about the museum is that a lot of the plaques are written in Arabic, so sometimes it is a little bit difficult to understand the very thing that you are looking at. This vandalization, you can see, is the work of a religious zealot, very possibly a Christian terrorist. The damaged statue you can see is that of the pharaoh Djoser. His claim to fame is that he was the owner of the first true pyramid, and the reason for its construction was that it was a spare in case his body was destroyed, and that would assist in the continuation of his soul. It is interesting to note that many Egyptian statues have damaged noses, and the reason for this was that the noses on the statues were African, and that did not fit the narrative. An alabaster sarcophagus from one of the early dynasties, and if one was to get a torch, it would go straight through the stone. You hear of the accuracy and sophistication of Egyptian carving? Well, here's an example of just that. This statue of the pharaoh Khafre disproves the story that Egyptians carved stone by bashing them with dolerite stones to shape them, because it is in itself made of dolerite, and it is a mirror image. The photo in no way does it justice. Likewise, the Menkori triad, which is a rare thing in Egypt, a statue that is not damaged. The copper statue proves that the Egyptians were also adept of working in copper. This is a statue of the pharaoh King Pipi I, and it is interesting to note that they even used rivets. If you look very closely, you can see parts of it are riveted together. So who knows, maybe even Egyptians invented the rivet. Behold a statue of Pharaoh Thutmose III. In the middle is a hieroglyph commemorating the unification of both Lower and Upper Egypt. One thing many of the pharaonic statues have in common is they are holding something like is being held in this pharaoh's hand. I have no idea what it is or what it's for. If anyone knows, can they please post it in the comments? The unusual looking Sphinx of Amenemhet III from the 12th dynasty. Likewise, an unusual way of holding a woman. This statue is of a steward from the Temple of Neith. In my series of videos on the Egyptian gods, I go into details about all the Egyptian gods, and there are links in the description. Before us is a vizier by the name of Hor from the 22nd dynasty. In ancient Egyptian society, a vizier was only second to the pharaoh. Behind him you will see a box which he has the ability to slide in and out of. He is aided in this by the strange looking structures on the right of the photograph. These parts do not match, but in a set it gives the ability of the statue to move, and on occasions you even find slots cut in the box itself to reduce friction. Colossal statue of King Ramesses II as a child, being watched over by the god Horus, possibly the most controversial pharaoh of all time. The pharaoh Akhenaten, father of Tutankhamun. Starting with his looks and the fact that he turned away from traditional Egyptian gods and worshipped the Aten. On his sarcophagus, which is beautiful, the face has been destroyed, not by vandals, but by Egyptian priests, and the cartouche that says his name too has been destroyed, to obliterate him from the afterlife. His canopic jars still survive, and his tomb is hardly worth a visit. Behold, a decorative pyramid or a pyramid capstone. Who knows? But the exciting thing is that it is made of bronze, a material that the Egyptians were not supposed to have. Two more splendid examples of Egyptian quality of workmanship. One of them is a stand for something or other, and the other one is said to be a bathtub, but it may be a reflector of some kind, both shaped in granite and both featuring a mirror finish. King Ramesses III, flanked by the gods Horus and Seth. Yet another and a far better example of sliding or walking statues. On the left of the picture we have the headless horseman, an unknown individual. In the centre we have Horus and Prince Hormeket, which were interchangeable with the one house. Followed by a magnificent example of the goddess Talouet. A horse's skull next to what looks like an iron axe. No, it can't be. The Egyptians never had iron. And look at these beautifully carved horses' heads, carved from granite and fitted out with bridles. And underneath them, I'm sure that looks like iron swords. It couldn't be. But on a closer inspection, it appears that the Egyptians did have iron swords. Now, I don't know what period they're from, but that's certainly different to the history that they're telling us about. While viewing a set of scales, it's obvious that one should weigh up the truth of Egyptian history. And then after weighing it up, why not sieve through it with a beautifully made copper sieve? On the left-hand side is a rather spooky image on the inside of a sarcophagus, somewhat appearing to be an angel. In the centre is a broken sarcophagus that gives you some idea of the construction technique. And then the spookiest image of them all is the one on the right, the one of the Roman Emperor Caracalla, carved as an Egyptian pharaoh. Whether or not this was a statue that was reworked, I don't know, but it shows you some of the strange things that history can throw up. This section of the museum is dedicated to the Ptolemaic time of ancient Egypt. For a period of time, the Greeks ruled over Egypt. And all of our mathematics that has Greek names, it is interesting to note that the architects of this mathematics studied in Alexandria. Very likely, Greek mathematics could possibly be Egyptian. And in Alexandria, Cleopatra built the finest library in the world, which was sadly burnt down. And Cleopatra, interestingly, who was the last pharaoh, is closer in time to us than the pharaohs who built the pyramid. The Greeks simply fell in love with Egypt. They are said to have been the greatest spending dynasty in Egyptian history. They built an incredible range of temples in Egypt. Many of them are still standing today. And then after the Roman invasion, that was the beginning of the end of Egyptian culture. A tiny corner of the museum is dedicated to current events, and this serves as a timely reminder that we ourselves one day may find ourselves in a museum with people pondering over our existence, how we did things, how we thought about things, so on and so forth. All of the great things in Egypt were shaped by tools. So I've endeavoured to group them together. Whether it's ivory tools for my lady's pleasure, stoneworking tools, or wheels and pulleys, they are all there on display. Be it string lines and the finest carving tools, or those used to weave and shape fabric. Even tools that are used in the kitchens across Egypt in ancient times, be it makeup cases or tools for tending the ground, and a magnificent display of copper-headed axes. A tradesman's carry bag still exists, along with tools for shaping and carving timber, and edgings made of copper, and tools of an unknown nature, lumps of copper whose purpose has long been lost, along with legging plates for fine furniture, and finally tools for shaping leather. People have definitely been dying for a long time in Egypt. The amount of sarcophaguses spread across the building is amazing, and it's worth the while to take your time to look at them. Not only do they have inscriptions from the Book of the Dead, which I have done a previous video on, they have many amazing pieces of art on them. Clues are even given on the way the Egyptians shaped stone. It's obvious from these cutouts that they used tools that spun. This one that looks like a treasure chest has a natural indentation in the stone, and rather than recarve it, they simply carved hieroglyphs into it as a cost and time-saving measure. And those of poorer socio-economic status had sarcophaguses made of wood, and despite being thousands of years old, many of them too have survived. Unusually, I think this one might even be carved out of sandstone. As colourful as this one looks in the photograph, it looks amazing when you see it in true life. As I approached this artifact, I knew exactly what it was. It was the Sabu Disk, better known as the Schist disk, one of the most controversial artifacts in Egyptian archaeology.
Sabu Disk, often called the Schist disk, the Sabu Disk is one of the most mysterious and debated objects in Egyptology. Here is the breakdown of what it is and why it causes so much stir. 1. Discovery and age found in 1936 by British archaeologist Walter Bryan Emery. Location, the Saqqara necropolis, inside the tomb, Mastaba S 3111 of Prince Sabu, a high-ranking official and likely the son of Pharaoh in Egypt. Age, it dates back to the first dynasty, approximate 3000 to 2800 BC. Making it over 5000 years old. 2. Physical characteristics: the disk is remarkable for its complex geometry, which many people find futuristic or industrial in appearance. Material: it is carved from metacell stone, often referred to as schist, a very fragile, flaky rock that is extremely difficult to carve into complex shapes without breaking. Design: it measures about 61 centimeters 24 inches in diameter. It looks like a shallow bowl with a central hub and 3 thin, curved lobes or wings, folded toward the center. The mystery: the precision of the curves and the thinness of the stone suggest a level of craftsmanship that seems out of place for the early dynastic period, especially before the widespread use of metal tools like bronze. Point 3. Theories: what was it? Because it is unique, no other object like it has ever been found, its purpose remains a mystery. The mainstream view: ceremonial. Most archaeologists believe it was a ritual vessel or a decorative bowl used for offerings. Its placement in a tomb suggests it was a prized possession for the afterlife. The out-of-place theory: ancient tech due to its resemblance to a propeller, turbine, or flywheel. Fringe theorists often suggest it is an out-of-place artifact. Some speculate it could be a model of a lost technology or part of a chemical mixing machine. The functional theory: oil lamp. Some researchers suggest it could have been a multi-wick oil lamp, where the 3 lobes held floating wicks, and the central hole allow it to be mounted.
Along the stairwell are papyruses from the Book of the Dead. You'll find the full Book of the Dead in one of my earlier videos. It's clear to me that we've learnt nothing since Egyptian times with regard to jewellery, and take note of the shoes. They could be as modern as ones made today. In a room full of broken tablets, I was beginning to wonder if that lady cleaning the glass was chasing me, or maybe she wanted a date or something. These are actually not the tools that you have already seen. They are different, or at least in a different part of the museum. Those rounded stones on the right-hand side of the video are what the ancient Egyptians are supposed to have shaped stone with, being made of diorite. It seems interesting that in an Egyptian museum you find what Australians would call boomerangs, building the case somewhat for the legitimacy of the Gosford hieroglyphs. You'll find that I have done a full video on the subject, and of course there will be a link in the description. You constantly have to remind yourself as you walk through the museum that you're looking at artifacts that were built by a civilization when Europe was still tribal and existing in caves. Whether it was the Nile River or the country's location, there is something truly special about ancient Egypt, and it is difficult to define it, but it's real and you feel it more and more as you delve deeper into the Egyptian culture. All too quickly I passed by some beautiful blue pyramid models. I should at this stage explain the Egyptian obsession with pyramids. A great number of the Egyptian gods were said to be born in the waters of Nam upon the Bin Bin Mound, with the Bin Bin Mound being pyramidal in shape. Unquestionably, Sumerian society predates that of the ancient Egyptian one. One of the interesting things is they speak much of a handbag that the gods and the Anunnaki all seem to have in their statues. And this particularly gets the attention of conspiracy theorists. However, it seems that Egyptians too had such handbags, and as close as I could get to look at them, I couldn't find anything spooky about them at all. As I walk around and see all these jugs, it reminds me of the diet of the pyramid builders. It was said to be bread, beer, which these containers probably once contained, and a large amount of meat, which was a food of value in ancient Egyptian times, but the tradesmen who worked on the pharaoh's tombs were valued individuals. Here we have a pharaoh with visions of grandeur, showing himself to be the god Hapi, the pharaoh being Amenemhet III. And then we walk into a room not of taxidermy, but mummification. It seems that the ancient Egyptians mummified all things from dogs, cats, ibises, crocodiles, anything that was important. And as you move around this room, you are surprised by the condition of some of the long since deceased animals. In a pharaoh's tomb, all their needs needed to be catered for, and there is nothing more important in a desert than water. And this jug in front of us is a unique design. It is slightly porous and brings about evaporative cooling, and from it you can have a beautiful cool drink of water. And surprisingly, design has little changed throughout the millennia, with it still in use in a lot of Middle Eastern and African countries today. Behold a modern example on Elephantine Island.
Yeah, these are Nubian pots where they keep cold water for drinking. So if you drink this water, you feel comfortable with it. It's a nice water, so it can be kept there for a long time. It can get bad. So it's a nice one.
The first image to come into focus are these weird shaped things, which are actually pillows, and they look mighty uncomfortable to me. It is important to remember that models were made of all the things that pharaohs used or had in life, so they could appreciate them in the afterlife. And this section of the museum is known as the grave goods section. Some of the pharaohs had full contingents of soldiers, and many of them had model boats. And it's hard to believe that these models are 4,000 years old and still in the condition they're in today. It's just amazing how well preserved things are in Egyptian tombs. The most famous death mask is that of Tutankhamun, but it can be seen that other pharaohs and nobles had wooden death masks? And additionally, did you notice the colour of the skin of the people attending the boats? Egyptians had dark skin, despite what the history books try to tell us, and it's obvious by their artwork. Many of the pharaoh's items were neatly placed in boxes ready for use, and canopic jars, of which you should be seeing about now, were used to preserve the organs that could not be mummified. And with such gold that was not looted, it was not used sparingly. Practically everything was gilded. Gold was considered to be the flesh of the gods, yet surprisingly, silver was more sought after than gold. And it is said that the parts of the body that needed to be animated needed to be covered in gold for the process to occur upon one's journey to heaven, or what the Egyptians called it, the field of reeds. Tutankhamun's death mask is not the only golden mask to be found, and the range of sarcophaguses seems to be endless, with some for small children and others for animals. The smaller and smaller cases you see here are so that one will fit inside the other, a bit like a Russian babushka, all aimed at protecting the body of the deceased. Then after another brief display of more grave goods, you enter a room which is completely filled with sarcophaguses from long dead Egyptians. And your mind comes to terms with the fact that each one of these boxes once contained a living, breathing human who thought and felt just like you. And then ghoulishly you're browsing over the box which was supposed to house them for the rest of eternity. It should be added that neither videos or photos do justice to the quality of the workmanship and the colours and magnificent artwork on and inside the sarcophaguses. And then you come across a strange one, such as this one, that in no way looks Egyptian. but somehow, some way it must be. The non-fuss sarcophagus of Amos Merriman, a queen from the 18th dynasty, and her simple grave goods. These skeleton-like structures are braces to secure the sarcophagus closed once sealed. Very small, possibly for a child in this case. A simple but rare unwrapped mummy or unlooted. This box would have been a housing for the canopic jars. And the appearance of an undisturbed mummy still wearing her jewellery and funerary ornaments. Here is what I will call the coffin, and there is what will fit inside it. The well-held always had stone sarcophaguses on the outside, and I should have mentioned it earlier, but you notice the damage on the side of many of the sarcophaguses I've shown you? That is an account of grave robbers forcing them open. In the times in which we live now, no pharaoh is better known than the pharaoh Tutankhamun. And the museum has a magnificent display of his grave goods. Although it should be said they are slowly moving it to the Grand Egyptian Museum. His golden death mask is as well known as the pyramids themselves. Taking the throne at the tender age of 9, and he did have brown skin and looked like this. The artwork in his tomb and on various other things is proof of it. And then later as a man he would have appeared something like this.
Tutankhamun, circa 1341 to 1323 BC, colloquially known as King Tut, was an Egyptian pharaoh of the 18th dynasty during the New Kingdom. Ascending the throne at age 9, he is best known for his relatively minor historical role being overshadowed by the 1922 discovery of his nearly intact tomb, KV 62, which remains the most complete royal burial ever found in the Valley of the Kings. Life and reign. Restoration period. Tutankhamun's primary achievement was reversing the religious reforms of his father, Akhenaten, who had established a monotheistic worship of the sun disk, Aten. Tutankhamun restored the traditional polytheistic religion, reinstated the god Daemonius to supremacy, and moved the royal court from Amarna back to Memphis. Advisors. Due to his youth, he was heavily guided by senior officials, primarily the vizier and the military commander Horemheb, both of whom eventually succeeded him as pharaoh. Family. He was the son of Akhenaten and a woman known as the Younger Lady, identified via DNA as his father's sister. He married his half-sister, Inkesineman. They had 2 daughters who were stillborn and buried with him. Death and physical health. Tutankhamun died unexpectedly at approximately age 18 or 19. His cause of death has been the subject of intense debate, with modern research identifying several contributing factors. Malaria and bone disease. Genetic testing in 2010 revealed he suffered from severe malaria and collar disease, a rare bone disorder of the foot. Leg fracture. A compound fracture in his left leg, which showed no signs of healing, suggests a traumatic injury shortly before death, possibly from a chariot accident or hunting fall. Physical appearance. Forensic reconstructions based on CT scans depict him with a slight build, an overbite, and potentially a clubfoot that may have required the use of walking sticks, over 130 of which were found in his tomb. Discovery of the tomb, KV 62. Excavation. The tomb was discovered in November 1922 by British archaeologist Howard Carter, funded by the 5th Earl of Carnarvon. Treasures. The tomb contained over 5,000 artifacts, including the iconic gold mask, 3 nested coffins, the innermost made of solid gold, chariots, and jewelry. Curse of the Pharaohs. The early death of Lord Carnarvon from an infected mosquito bite 5 months after the opening of the tomb popularized the myth of a mummy's curse, though statistical studies of the excavator's lifespans have since debunked this.
It goes without saying, if it looks like gold, it is gold. How about we do a quick journey to the Valley of the Kings to look at the man's tomb before we see his treasure, and you will discover it just as I did. Don't worry, there'll be a full episode on the Valley of the Kings in a future video. This is the entrance to the tomb of Tutankhamun. Probably the most famous pharaoh, not because of his time as a pharaoh, but because of his tomb and the fact that his tomb was mostly intact when discovered by Harold Hale. I've been waiting my whole life to come to this place. It's expensive, but it's worth it. And there is the man himself. The tomb is relatively small by Valley of the Kings standards, probably because there wasn't long to prepare for it. And the room which once housed treasure is still off limits, but you can go into the burial chamber. The nature of his burial was both expensive and complex. The boxes you saw at the beginning of the video, this is their purpose. One nests inside the other and finally nesting around a granite case. But that's far from the end of it. There are yet 3 more sarcophaguses, nesting one inside the next, with the final one being made of solid gold. Then we come to the famous desk mask, and finally, bound in bandages, is the mummy itself. And one of the mysteries of Egypt, the entrance to the tomb that you saw earlier, has been widened in modern times. How did they get such big and heavy things in and out of the tomb? Does anybody fancy some gold jewellery? Tutankhamun certainly had enough of it. Tutankhamun's canopic jars, along with a case which was once beautiful, and another one I believe that contained the game of Senet, and this one looks all the world like a peace pipe. A throne fit for a pharaoh. By our standards, Egyptian beds are rather strange. I don't know whether the bend in the middle has occurred over time or they were actually made that way. Likewise, I don't know if a golden bed gives you a better night's sleep. Despite the precious metal, Tutankhamun's chariot looks rather flimsy, and I believe they may have even used leather in parts of it for its construction. And now what everybody has been waiting to see, Tutankhamun's innermost coffin and his death mask. Well, I hope you enjoyed that video. It was a lot of work, and please like and subscribe. It does make a difference, and as always, there's plenty more to come. Stay safe, cheers, and bye for now.